Hello guys. Welcome to another video. This is Wisdom King YouTube channel. By the way, subscribe over YouTube channel for more exciting videos of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. Spoiler alert, in this video used images just for reference. Chapter 1. The Eve of the Festival. Part 3. If you haven't seen part 1 and 2 of chapter 1 yet, take a look, there is a link in the description. We were in our meeting hall. Shunar and Shun were busy with all sorts of prep work. Catering for such a large crowd, after all, meant careful advance preparation. And Gabil and Kurob were just as busy, performing final checks on the exhibits they had going. Since I wasn't dealing with monsters right now, I didn't need to put on such an overpowering, "I am stronger than you" act, thus I figured we didn't need my entire staff on hand. And given the lack of a strict species-based hierarchy, things didn't have to be nearly as solemn and pretentious. I was, obviously, in human form, dressed to the nines in order to express my force and financial wealth. That part, frankly, I didn't care about. Being a slime would have been a lot easier, but I'd given up on pushing that. On that note, none of my advisors was willing to budge. The nobility from the western nations were inoffensive enough in their greetings to me. The king of Brumund arrived in the midst of our hellos, looking like the same nice, approachable middle-aged man as ever, the kind of king you'd expect in an illustration from a book of fairy tales. Next to him was his queen, beautiful and still looking young. I didn't know her age, but apparently they had been married over 20 years. At first glance, they didn't look like the best of matches, but they were a loving one, and the people of Brumund were great fans of them both. "I must apologize for not thanking you sooner," he told me. "You winning over Marquis Muller and Earl Helmand, as well as applying pressure to the Western Holy Church, helped us all a great deal." It was this man's consent that had allowed Fuse to move so freely. I could have pulled off that plan only because of the promises he kept. And thanks to his singing my praises far and wide, my reputation actually didn't seem that bad. Judging by the increasing number of merchants coming to my nation, the kingdom of Brumund certainly proved influential to me. I gave the king thanks, but he laughed and waved it off. No, Sir Rimuru. There's hardly any need to thank me. All we did was live up to the terms of the treaty we ratified. And did Fuse tell you, by the way? I had staked quite a bit on you. Our nation's fate, in fact, is now tied in with yours. And I did this because we do stand to profit, of course, so there's no need for further thanks. He gave me a gregarious smile, but I could tell the king of Brumund could not be taken lightly. He just said, to my face, that he had his own interests in mind. The idea of requiring further thanks made him laugh. "Still," I said, "I am happy to see that you're trusted in us. Showing gratitude is always important." I didn't mean to keep banging on this point, but I wanted to bring it across. "I truly wonder if you really are a demon lord sometimes," the king replied with a snicker. Then he recomposed himself and looked me in the eye. "And I do understand that our Viscount Kazakh caused you quite a bit of trouble. I'm quite glad you were able to rescue your countrymen from him." Ah, Viscount Kazakh. It was mostly Majolmile he'd caused trouble for, though. And if I had to guess, that Authris gang had been operating in the forest of Jura well before I became Demon Lord. But it was a stain on the reputation of Brumund, I suppose, although it really all came down to the Viscount himself. He was just a patsy, really. A horrible man. It wasn't like he personally cracked the whip or anything, but a crime is a crime, as much as Kazakh apparently crowed about how the nobility can treat low-born monsters any way they want without penalty. Expecting to get off scot-free was far too selfish. "Well, with everything fully settled now, I have no interest in dragging that case any further," I replied. "I appreciate that. So what will you be doing with him?" As part of Brumund's nobility, I couldn't prosecute him under my own rules, but no punishment at all was unacceptable. I didn't want to make this a huge incident, but whether or not I did anything depended on the king of Brumund. He, fortunately, understood this. "Kazakh no longer holds a noble title," he said, voice turning low and ominous. "Given his ties with international criminal gangs, it's fair to say he's forgotten his duties as a nobleman. I would hardly abide the likes of him referring to himself as Brumundian nobility. Thus, he has been stripped of his titles and exiled from our lands. The House of Kazakh is no more, and thus I consider the case to be closed." No problems there. It almost seemed too harsh a penalty, but then, slave trading violates international law. Treating him with kid gloves could even make Brumund's king look like a pushover. Thinking of it that way, the punishment felt almost merciful to me. Kazakh had been a noble his whole life. Finding another life for himself would doubtlessly pose difficulties. Without His name, fortune, or even a familiar homeland, I didn't envy the path this man had ahead of him. But if he could stay alive, maybe he could turn over a new leaf. The punishment fit the crime, certainly, and I had no objection to it. Very well, I am willing to accept that punishment. A relief to hear. Is it safe to say that our treaty remains in effect, then? I'd hope for nothing else. Maybe remain partners for years to come. We exchanged a firm handshake. The incident was behind us. Now it was on to the main subject. The king's face brightened as he immediately got down to the business on his mind. Sir Rimuru, I heard the news from Fuse. He spoke of some grand operation you had in the planning stages. Apparently, he wanted to hear more about the outlook on the future I'd given Fuse. Well, that's something involving much more than just your kingdom and mine. I'm hoping we can assemble representatives from all the nations involved for further discussion. I intended to travel to you to discuss it in detail, but... Oh ho ho, no need to be so secretive. Fuse gave me a short rundown, but it sounds like something that could very well affect our position in the world. I could hardly leave the matter to my bureaucracy. In that case, I could go into some detail. The official discussion was planned for another day. For now, I gave the king my basic plans for turning Brumund into a distribution hub for the world at large. I see. My lord, this sounds like a proposal we should move every mountain to make a reality, doesn't it? I had given only a quick rundown, but the king had a different look about him by this point. The real him was now on the surface, revealing a man burning with ambition, and his queen, who hadn't spoken until now, had just as much trouble hiding her excitement. It seemed this woman was as equally astute as her husband. No doubt my pitch was all she needed to accurately calculate how much profit was on the table. Brumund's king wasn't their only leader I should watch out for. Here we had a king with a gambler's penchant for snap decisions, along with a calm, collected, and calculating queen. Their powers combined must have been what had made this small kingdom so continuously influential. Of course, I cautioned, this only happens after the Founders' Festival is a resounding success. It's still 3 days before it begins. Oh ho ho, I'm sure there is little to worry about. Why, it hasn't started yet, and just look at how lively things are. And I can only imagine how many nobles worldwide are making the journey over here. I can only imagine, echoed the queen. But as you said, Sir Rimuru, there is no need for us to hurry matters. A plan like the one you proposed will require an agreement from all the nations involved. In the meantime, we will work with our own government to ensure a consensus on this matter. My lady is right. It was simply delightful to hear such a fine proposal from you, Sir Rimuru. Now, shall we be on our way? I hope the Tempest Founders Festival is a resounding success, the queen closed as she and her husband got to their feet. They had no intention of acting all pompous and wasting my time talking in pointless prose. They had what they came for, and now they were done with me. I liked them for that. It was much easier to deal with. Thank you, I replied. Please enjoy our nation to the fullest. We certainly intend to, the king shouted as they walked away, to which the queen added, yes, I can hardly wait. We hope you all enjoyed this video. If you like this kind of content, then subscribe over YouTube channel for more exciting videos.